Hi everyone, I'm Martijn Verburg. I'm the Principal Group Manager for the Java Engineering Group here at Microsoft, and I'm speaking to you all the way from London, United Kingdom. And whereabouts in the world are you, Ed?
I'm coming to you from Orlando, Florida, United States.
Awesome. The magic of digital composition. We're going to have loads of fun.
Yes, let's get started. Now, we know you have a lot of choices to look at your Ignite talks, and we're excited this year to bring Ignite to a much larger audience, thanks to being a 100% virtual event. And these talks are available on demand, and we are happy that you're coming to visit our talk. So our plan for your time investment is that we want to demonstrate, one, that Microsoft is committed to Java. We're very excited because this has not historically been the case. And I can speak from personal experience, having worked on Java in various forms since 1997. First at Sun Microsystems, then at Oracle, and I've been very heavily involved in the development of Java EE. And we're real excited to bring to you some new announcements today about Java EE on Azure, and also Spring and VS Code for Java, and all manner of different kinds of exciting things. So we're very committed to Java. We also know that enterprises are running Java and having success with that. So we have a few great customer success stories to talk to there. Then the heart of the talk is Azure itself, right? And we know that Java is part of your cloud journey, and we want you to understand that your enterprise can bring Java on your terms to Azure. After that, we're going to cover the tools for developing Java solutions on Azure, and then we'll finally close out with a summary and a call to action.
Awesome. Cool. So Java matters an awful lot on Azure. The top users of all of Azure's very popular data storage services come from Java. Java and Linux, of course, are synonymous with being hand in hand, and it may surprise some of you, but actually half of the VMs that Azure runs today actually runs Linux. We have incredible amounts of workloads of customer business applications running on Azure, and Microsoft actually uses Java heavily internally itself with properties like Yammer, LinkedIn, and Minecraft.
And it's important to talk about GNU Linux here, because I remember in the early days of Java, really it was much more platform focused. Even though it was supposed to be cross-platform, the actual platforms where the JVMs ran, it took quite a while to get Java actually on Linux as a supported thing. But now that is the default. Most people that are doing Java are doing so on Linux, and a lot of the workloads that we have on Azure are in fact coming from the Linux side of the story.
Yeah, and I hope not too many folks from the Java ecosystem who know me from that conference circuit may remember me saying that I would never work in a Windows or Microsoft dominated environment, or I'll eat my hat. Well, here I am eating my hat 1 year in, and very happy to do so.
All right.
So I guess on to our partners. So to kind of demonstrate, to show that Microsoft really understands the Java ecosystem, Java isn't about a single vendor. It's about a whole ecosystem of vendors, providers, partners, customers, users. It's a federation. And here you can see some of the important ones that we, Microsoft, partner with to make sure that you can bring the Java the way you want to us. We partner with Oracle as an example, who are the stewards of Java. We have IBM, who bring their cloud packs in our marketplace. We have Azure, Red Hat, OpenShift. So all of the kind of deployment areas or partnerships that you have with Java today, we have them here on Azure as well.
And it's important to demonstrate the transition of Microsoft itself from a know-it-all company to a learn-it-all company. And this has been brought about by a multi-year process brought about by our CEO Satya Nadella. And I remember the historical legacy of Microsoft has been, they decide what platform will have, what the platform will have, and what you will use, and then just sort of tell the world, okay, now you go out and use it. Java is bigger than that, so it really fits well with the transition from being a know-it-all company to a learn-it-all company. And partners are a huge part of that, because the partners, especially in Java, have the many years of expertise. So all of these partners here, VMware, Azure, Red Hat, IBM. They have been doing Java from its very beginning, part of the Java community process. And so we're listening to them and developing our solutions with them. So let's talk about how this talk will be broken down. We really want to demonstrate to you that we can give you Java on your terms, and that means all across the span of what Azure offers, with virtual machines, containers, managed services, and serverless. So there's a mapping on the left-hand side. The Java platform itself has always been broken down into these different editions, starting with the core JDK, and then we have two main enterprise stacks that are on top of that core SDK, Java EE, Jakarta EE, and Spring. And most of the world that's doing enterprise Java right now is using either of those two things, Java EE or Spring. And we have great support in many different levels across the spectrum here. So you can think of Java on Azure as a cross-cutting concern, to use a term from aspect-oriented programming. So for each of these layers, you can find Java manifested. Virtual machines, we have marketplace offers, we have pre-built solution templates that you can use to deploy Java EE. For containers, you can run operators that deploy enterprise stacks on top of the container-based platforms. For managed services, we have Tomcat, Spring, OpenShift, a number of other managed services. And also that is where you get multi-cloud into the picture as well. And serverless. Serverless is an important part of the full complete stack. And in fact, it's part of the transition towards a complete separation of control between business logic and the surrounding runtime environment. And it's really the culmination of the entire industry working for many years to separate boilerplate from core business logic. And that's why serverless is an important technology.
And the really important thing here is it's choice. It's your choice to bring Java the way you want to bring it.
So another aspect of being a learn-it-all, I mentioned the partners, is also the customers, right? So we focus on being a customer-obsessed company, and that means listening to what customers want us to build and then going to build it, not the other way around. So Java was designed as a general-purpose programming language, and we have a few different customers that we're focusing on here from 3 different industries: manufacturing, retail, and logistics. And the general purpose success of the Java technology itself is very well manifested in how these 3 completely different industry sectors are able to obtain great results using Java on Azure.
Right, and so here's the first example. We have a couple of well-known household names in manufacturing here, Daimler and Hitachi. They've been Java users since the very beginning, utilizing Java in their middleware and using it to run their mission-critical business applications. And one of the strengths for Java for them undoubtedly has been the connectivity that it gives them to specialized software systems in their particular industry. And again, they have the choice to be able to bring that the way they want to Azure, and they've had an awful lot of success there. So you can see with Daimler, for example, having the capability of having their own Tomcat or their managed Tomcat here on Azure was a great choice for them to be able to make. Right, and so next up we have the retail sector. Now the retail sector is increasingly becoming the software sector. And they're facing new challenges. The old world of bricks and mortar has gone away for many of these giant retailers. Once again, Best Buy, very much a household name. And as you can see, they're quite a sophisticated user of the Azure Service Stack here. You can see that Java is at the core of everything. They use Azure's app service using Tomcat to run their Java there. They can connect onto the Azure Event Bus, which, by the way, supports good old Java Message Service, JMS, which still runs trillions of transactions a day across multiple enterprises. And you can see the Azure services supporting behind the scenes there. So Cosmos DB for the document storage, Azure Key Vault to ensure that secrets can be injected into those Java applications safely, so on and so forth. So again, Best Buy was able to take their on-premise application, take it to Azure, and then slowly start modernizing it more towards a cloud-native solution.
And I can say, as in my role in the engineering on the technologies that are actually represented on this slide, it's not one and done. We're continuing to partner with Best Buy. They're continuing to bring requirements to us, and that is helping us improve the quality of the platform for all of the other users. So we're taking real world requirements and bringing them and applying them to the stack so that others are able to take advantage of that. All right, the next customer we're going to focus on here is J.B. Hunt. They are a global leader in logistics, and they have been using Java since 1998. They started out with the old IBM San Francisco project, which eventually became J2EE and was refined, and many years later became Java EE and Jakarta EE. And as with many enterprises, their solution offerings are all of the above. Pretty much any technology you can imagine, they're using it in their stack in some way because the size and diversity of their business is so huge. So the key point I want you to take away here is you can continue to leverage the crown jewel of your business, which is the line of business apps, and leverage them into Azure as time goes on without having to throw away any of that core investment that you've been making over the years.
You make a great point there. A lot of people talk about, legacy applications or building, new cloud native applications. I like to think of legacy applications as the thing that drives your business and makes you all of your revenue. And they should be lauded and looked after and transported across to, a place like Azure where they can be made more scalable and more flexible. So here we have an example of different ways you can bring Java to Azure, no matter which stage of your lifecycle you're at. If you just want to lift and shift your existing monolith, as an example, we of course supply all of the VMs that you could possibly want, whether that be Windows, variants of Linux. And we also have a whole variety of what we call templates, which are pre-packaged, pre-built with the JDK that you want, and a whole bunch of other extras that you might need, for example, if you were to run, let's say, a WebLogic or a specific Java server of some description.
So the nice thing about this slide is it really makes it clear that it's a journey, and Azure is going along with you on this journey. We're helping to provide the path that you can go on, but the direction you want to go is up to you. And each of these pathways have different trade-offs. The virtual machines, they offer a trade-off between ease of migration, lift and shift of your enterprise right up there into the VMs and you're done. But there's a higher total cost of ownership because that flexibility means the compute is more expensive. Whereas on the container-based solutions, as represented between AKS and OpenShift, there might be a difficulty in re-architecting that. So once you get there, you're more in a cloud-native sense, but it is a little bit more challenging to get there. Then you might have to ask yourself, is multi-cloud a requirement or not? We want to make sure that you have all of the choices and options, and the decision is up to you. So Martin, can you give us a little more detail on what those trade-offs are and how they are represented in Azure?
Yeah, sure. Let's go to the first one. So as I started with before, people can start with virtual machines, and for me personally, this was a choice that was missing from a lot of cloud providers out there, and even in the recent past, right? A lot of different cloud providers are trying to force you into deploying the Java application the way they want. But we know and we understand that these line of business Java applications can be really complicated beasts. And having the ability just to lift and shift them to an environment where you just get the natural elasticity and flexibility and security of cloud is super important. So for containers, it's kind of the next stage of evolution. Containers have taken the software world by storm. Both Docker and Kubernetes are today de facto standards. And just about any CTO or CIO you talk to either has moved their organization to containers or has a plan to do so in the next 12 months. The wonderful flexibility containers really gives you here is that you can still run them on your own VM if you wish to manage it yourself. You can run it in, say, a managed service such as our Kubernetes service, AKS. And to Ed's earlier point, you also have a little bit of multi-cloud flexibility here. You can take your container and you can move it to another cloud should you need to for regulatory reasons or whatever other good reasons you might have.
So one of the aspects of the cloud that we have to point out is that Microsoft is not in the business of picking a stack favorite or picking a winner, right? So that means you have flexibility for multi-cloud, but it also means you have a very heterogeneous environment. And when you have heterogeneous environments that involve containers, there are a lot of concerns that you might have regarding the security of the Docker images that you're pulling from when you're building your containerized solutions. So both of our container services that are shown on here, and also the other ones like OpenShift, Azure Red Hat OpenShift, depend on Azure Container Registry. And Azure Container Registry has very good interface with our security and monitoring tools. One manifestation, real quick. I know we don't have too much time, but I did want to talk about Docker files. Docker files have dependencies that are represented in from clauses that can span many layers up between your business logic and the underlying runtime that's in the Docker image. Each of those is an independently involving piece of software, which means as time goes on, vulnerabilities are discovered and need to be patched. CVE vulnerabilities, for example. Customers want a very high level of security and guarantee that they can stay on top of this complexity, and the Azure security provided by ACI, Azure Container Registry, is very, very good and well suited for that task.
And it's really interesting seeing that industry trend happen. Actually, we're left shifting being able to deal with security concerns all the way at the kind of build stage or even at development stage. And we're also taking what is an insurmountable human problem, being able to scan, limitless transitive dependencies for security vulnerabilities, and we're applying Microsoft's technology to go solve that problem for you.
All right, let's talk about multi-cloud.
Let's talk about multi-cloud. So multi-cloud, again, for either regulatory purposes or simply because you want to have choice. And both Ed and I come from a background where we're stalwarts, sort of big supporters of Java EE and the sort of independence that it gave you to move between vendors. That was one of the big successes behind Enterprise Java. And so we give you that choice here as well. And we have two main options for you. You can use the Red Hat OpenShift multi-cloud option here, or you can use VMware's Tanzu, especially if you're more of a Spring user in particular.
All right.
Managed services. Some people call this platform as a service. We have a whole bunch of different building blocks you can use here. The main one that we'd like to talk about is called Azure App Service. This service actually supports all of the first-tier languages out there in the ecosystem today. So you can talk about .NET, Python, Node.js, and of course Java. With Java, we have Tomcat to begin with, and I'll hand over now to Ed to speak about the thing we're about to release.
Yep, so we have an exciting announcement this week during Ignite, JBoss EAP on App Service. And this is an important homecoming for me in some sense, because JBoss EAP 7.2, which is the supported version here, is a full stack implementation of the Java EE 8 specification. And before joining Microsoft, I worked on Java EE 8 and 7 and 6 and 5 and 4, and was the spec lead for JSF and Servlet. And these are two key components of the Java EE stack. And now to see that they're available as a pass on Azure is a really fun thing to observe. And I'm excited to be a part of that. So take a look at this link here and you can see the documentation, and it's just another drop-down choice in the app service stack.
And it's fantastic to see this coming to app service. I know from my personal experience before joining Microsoft, I spent many years in the financial services industry, and JBoss EAP was at the heart of so many different middleware systems, and so it's great to see us supporting that here.
Right. And I did mention that the enterprise world has two main stacks for Java-based software, and the first one being Java EE and the second one being at Spring. So we have a really great partnership with VMware, and we have a fully managed PaaS service called Azure Spring Cloud. This is in general availability now, and it has a lot of great features, but the takeaway for you in this audience here is it's a fully managed infrastructure. We handle the lifecycle management. We handle the ease of monitoring. You just have to build your business logic. And if you're ready for microservices, then Azure Spring Cloud is ready for you. Let me take a little bit of a deep dive for the developers in the audience here. Doing a microservices-based architecture has a lot of challenges, but it also has a lot of rewards. Otherwise, it wouldn't be so popular, right? So there are a number of microservices patterns that are just handled for you out of the box with Azure Spring Cloud. So service discovery is handled for you automatically. Circuit breakers, blue-green deployments, distributed versioning, and distributed tracing. All of those must-have checkpoints for microservices-based applications are handled for you out of the box in Azure Spring Cloud. Ease of monitoring. This is one of the key differences between a monolith-based application and a microservices-based application. In a monolith-based application, you have these very large stack traces that enable you to know exactly what is happening at any point in time in the system. With microservices, it's a little more complicated because you have a flow of control that's actually spanning different compute nodes. So you need to have a higher level of log analytics, distributed tracing. You can have a system where you can set up different threshold alerts. So if you want to be notified for scale up or scale down based on whatever's happening in the system, you can set up those alerts and they'll be ready for you automatically. Now that's the Azure Spring Cloud, but a lot of people are using Spring on Azure using their own stack. So they might be running VMs or Docker containers. They have to do this, they don't want the full convenience of a PaaS. They want more control themselves. So in order for that to work well, we have a very broad and deep set of Spring integrations that let you use the idiomatic way of programming to the Spring API and just take advantage of the Azure services as a matter of course. Because both Spring and Java EE have been solving enterprise problems for long before the cloud even existed, right? So they had evolved ways of doing things, and customers have been writing their applications to leverage those ways. The idea with the Spring integrations is that you can bring your Spring-based workloads to Azure, and things will just be Azure-ified, if you will. So let's take an example of Key Vault, right? Spring has had dependency injection for a very long time, going back to 2004. At the time, JSF 1.0 had managed objects. Spring had dependency injection. Started out with just a lot of XML files. Then over time, they added annotations, different ways of getting your dependencies injected into your runtime code. So now we have ways to inject the dependencies from Azure Key Vault, for example, using the standard Spring value annotations. And you don't have to do anything extra except for declare dependency on the Spring Boot starter for Key Vault. And we have these kind of starters for many other kinds of interactions. So basically, if there's a Spring way to do something, there's a way to apply that to Azure in a transparent and idiomatic, frictionless way.
And that's really helpful. And sort of to go back to Ed's earlier point about the microservices architecture and having all of that support for your 12-factor apps, it takes away so much pain. It really does. We've run across teams countless times who, when they have a bug in production, they don't even know which node it's happening on, right? And they don't have their circuit breakers in place. And it's very difficult to manage all that complexity. So it's great to see us managing that complexity for
Right. And we couldn't get there without help from our partners and customers too. So speaking of partners and customers, Java EE has always been kind of a vendor-focused thing where there are the different vendors that would create app servers, and those app servers would each have a standard API, but there were also vendor-specific things as well. So that pattern is something that exists, and we're accounting for that by partnering with different companies. So, for example, we have a very close partnership with Oracle, where we're bringing WebLogic Server to Azure in the form of a number of different marketplace offers. You can go into the Azure Marketplace and just type WebLogic and see a wide range of choices. We have VMs that come pre-installed with WebLogic, but we also have solution templates that let you deploy an entire WebLogic Server cluster with Azure service integrations right out of the box. We're working with IBM to expand the offerings. Right now we have the IBM Cloud Pak for data, and we're going to be working with them to provide guidance for other aspects of the IBM stack. And we also have support for the Azure Kubernetes Service, which allows operators to run off the shelf. Now, an operator is a piece of software that just brings an existing, you can think of it like an installer for Kubernetes, really. If you have, let's say, IBM Open Liberty, which is a Java EE container platform, you want to bring that to Azure Kubernetes Service, you can do that, or even Azure Red Hat OpenShift. This slide is a lot of detail, but I just wanted to demonstrate, one of those options there where you deploy the WebLogic server cluster to Azure and you have a number of different service integrations on the bottom. For example, Elastic Stack for your logs, various kinds of databases, whether it's document-based like Cosmos DB or relational like MySQL, Azure SQL Server, or even a distributed cache like Redis. We have integrations for all of those kinds of things. Okay, so the next point is to talk about guidance. Now, when building for the cloud, you're really assembling lots of things from off-the-shelf stacks. And all of those stacks, in addition to the aforementioned security vulnerabilities that can happen as they evolve, the feature sets also change. So it's important to have what we call migration guidance. And the migration guidance is a set of curated and maintained tutorials that really allow the developer to rest assured that when they follow the steps in this document, it is going to work, and it's going to work with the current set of offerings that are available on Azure. So we're able to create this guidance with the help of our partners and our field to tell us the kinds of stories that customers are wanting to do. And we're describing how to do it and get you up and running and maintained in a quick way.
And one of the strengths of that documentation set is, again, when you want to bring Java to Azure, your choice, your way, we have guidance for you on that. So if you want to bring it to VMs, containers, to Azure Functions, or to Spring Cloud as an example, there's a whole host of tutorials for you. And written in partnership, again, with real-world customers. And this is kind of one of the strengths of Microsoft's customer engagement model that we have.
Right.
So on to the underlying Java. A couple of years ago, the licensing model did change for Oracle's Java, and the release cadence has also changed for Java. And now we have 6 monthly releases. We have the concept of a long-term service release, and there's a lot more variety and choice in terms of whether you want free updates, commercial support, so on and so forth. We want to simplify all of that for you. So when you bring your Java workloads to Azure, you have the option of using Azure's Zulu Enterprise Edition. That is completely commercially supported for free as in use. So you can be reassured that when you're running your Java workloads on Azure, that you can be running a JDK or a JVM, which is fully supported by ourselves and our partner Azure. And they've been doing this for a very, very long time. And you can see by the support model down at the bottom of the screen there that this support is, lasts the lifetime of your long-term business applications.
Now, all right, one of the core strengths of Microsoft has always been understanding developer tools. We know how to build tools that developers love, but we also know that Java developers in particular love the tools they've already been using. So if we wanted to have success with Java on Azure, that means meeting developers where they are and the tools they're using. So while we do have a very excellent Java-based development environment in the form of Visual Studio Code, which has a deep and broad set of partner-developed with Red Hat solutions for editing, debugging, integration, code, IntelliSense, all of the things you do expect from an IDE, Visual Studio Code itself is focused on a slightly different target audience, which is more for polyglot authors, more of a lightweight editor. So it's not as full of a heavyweight solution that many Java developers are used to. Far and away, the most important developer environment for Java developers is IntelliJ IDEA. So to recognize that, we have plugins for all of the different kinds of things you want to do with IntelliJ. So Azure Web Apps, Azure Functions, great integration with Azure Spring Cloud, great integration with deployment technologies, and that also means Maven and Gradle. So we have Maven plugins and Gradle support in our tools for all of those ones that you can see on the slide there. Eclipse is also an important.
Yeah, and I discovered something really interesting when I first arrived at Microsoft and started using Visual Code in earnest for the first time. I really found myself always reaching for that particular IDE or code editor when it came to building microservices or doing new greenfield development, and when I was doing full stack work. So, maybe a JavaScript front end and a nice piece of Java business logic at the back. And then I could always go back to my IntelliJ when I was, looking at those really large, dare I even say it, multi-million line of code, die-hard, mission-critical business apps. So it was great to have that choice. That's a good point. DevOps tool integration. So the other critical thing for all of the engineers in your teams is to be able to deploy the code and to ensure that it's deployed continuously, that it is tested well, and that all of the tooling that you're used to in this space, which is more often than not Jenkins in the Java world, is well supported by Azure. So we do have all of the Jenkins integrations, our own Azure DevOps, which is our CI/CD solution, which is fantastic, by the way. I've completely fallen in love with it ever since I've gotten here. That also integrates really cleanly with Jenkins, and so you can use the two in conjunction to make sure that all of that Java software that you're building can get automatically deployed. We also have the Azure SDKs and client libraries. So a huge amount of effort has been put in here to make sure that when you want to interact with an Azure service and you're a Java developer, that you actually have a Java API that was built with Java developers in mind. So it follows the Java idioms, follows the design patterns, and you can embed these client libraries either directly in your applications, using good old Gradle or Maven. And there's also the command line option as well if you need to utilize that.
So there's also SDKs for all of the other top tier supported languages. We have one for Python, one for Go, one for .NET, of course. And so the point there is that we're meeting not just Java developers where they are, but all kinds of developers. And for each one, we have to determine the trade-off between idiomatic in that particular platform and the underlying technologies on the Azure side. So by having a large number of engineers working on this kind of technology to bring it to the developers that they understand, it's really an important thing for doing that.
Cool. Microsoft, I think Ed alluded to it right at the beginning of this talk. It's a different company from where it was 10 years ago. Microsoft is now strongly invested in open source and open communities and open standards. And that's demonstrated in the Java ecosystem as well. So my group directly contributes back to OpenJDK, which is the core of Java itself. And so you'll see our team adding all sorts of things like performance enhancements to make sure that the garbage collectors, as an example, work really well in a cloud and container-based environment. We've done things like pushed up the Windows ARM port, which is going to be an important platform for the whole software ecosystem going forward. On top of that, Microsoft has been involved right from the beginning, really, with Adopt OpenJDK, which is the world's, the second most utilized OpenJDK behind Oracle's Java now. And that has been a multi-vendor, multi-provider, community-driven. Java user groups and academics and end users are also involved. And Microsoft's a steering committee member there and a platinum sponsor. And last but not least, we're a strategic member of the Eclipse Software Foundation. Eclipse is has the new home for Java EE, which is now called Jakarta EE. It has interesting new microservice frameworks.
Yeah, microprofile is a real important thing. Yep.
Yeah, really, really important. So if you're a formerly or still a Java EE developer today and you're comfortable with those idioms, but you want to build more cloud-native applications, then microprofile is a really good one to look at. On top of that, Eclipse, of course, has a whole bunch of other important Java players, especially in the IoT space. So we do recommend you go visit.
Right, and Eclipse is where the work that powers the Java portion of Visual Studio Code is done. And Red Hat is also contributing that too. So those technologies, the Eclipse IDE, and is sort of a dual purpose technology where it goes just to Eclipse IDE, but it also goes into Visual Studio Code. So the Java power inside of Visual Studio Code is in large part coming through the Eclipse Foundation via the Eclipse technology. So let's sum it up for us, Martin.
Yeah, that's cool. Absolutely. So, in summary, we covered a lot of topics today, but the thing we're really trying to point out is that you can bring the Java the way you want to Azure. So unlike other providers, we do not dictate to you how you should bring your Java. You can lift and shift and bring it along to Azure. You can go down the container route. You can go with a managed service. You can go with a hybrid model of all of those. And we're even very happy to see you go multi-cloud with us as well. We have all the different solutions you might need. And your call to action really is to see for yourself. We have a link there at the bottom. That'll take you to all of the Java on Azure resources that we have. You'll see there the customer success stories and migration guides, listings and deep dive details on all of our services and things. And of course, both Ed and I are here online on Twitter, and you can reach out to us anytime. So thank you very much for your attention. And it was great fun doing this.
Okay, thanks a lot. Bye-bye.